research phase of the Chicago-Kent Appellate Brief training. I am Alex Peck. I am the LexisNexis representative for Chicago-Kent, and I'm very excited that you've joined me today. We're specifically going to be talking about this first step of what I call the three-step process for appellate research. And in this step, we're focused on the research aspect of things. Now, we spent quite a bit of time in LW1 and LW2 talking about both statutory research. We also spent a lot of time talking about secondary materials and secondary source research. But today, what I would like to do is first, I want to show you a few different ways that you can do some additional research on Lexis Plus to find what you're looking for. We're going to be talking about a different way to organize the search, select, filter process, as well as talking a little bit about the Explore Content Pod. But then we're going to dive in and we're going to dissect a case and find even more material within our case law. Last but not least is I'm going to introduce you to a tool called Legal Topic Summaries, which basically give you the ability to get a bunch of information on a topic that may help you with your argument, provide some foundational understanding, and also help you in outlining in the future. But let's start off with that extra way that we can perform our research that I was talking about. So in class, we've talked about the three-step process of search, select, filter. Searching, right? We use a fact and an issue of law that we have. We formulate a search that's going to help us, right? Then we select the content type that we would like. Often we would want to start with secondary sources, as that's a great place to get foundational knowledge and material. But we also can choose things like statutes, cases, what have you, anything that we need. And then finally, we filter. We filter down to make sure we're looking at the right jurisdiction that we want, that we're looking at the materials that we want to find, and any other content that would be helpful to us. But there's a different way that we can actually perform that process. Think of it as select, filter, search. Now, I didn't share this with you in our introductory classes because I think that the search, select, filter process does a great job of kind of orienting you to how to perform legal research. But let's say you know exactly what direction you want to go in. You know what content you're looking for. You even know what filters you want to apply. You can select, filter, search to get to places a little bit more quickly. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to take a look at this search bar in the middle here, right? Right to the right of our shepherd eyes icon within the search bar, we have these two bubbles, all categories and all jurisdictions. These are our select and our filter options. Select for all categories means that we can choose the category that the content type category that we're looking for. In this instance, let's go ahead and choose cases. Now we have our jurisdictional or our court filters to the right here. So just some of the filters that we're looking for, but we can provide a filter to choose our jurisdiction. Here, I'm going to select United States Supreme Court. I'm going to select the 7th Circuit, and I'm going to select Illinois here. When I then put this drop down back up, you'll notice that my filters, my narrow constraints, are below my search bar, and I can see that anything that I put in my search bar here is going to be teased and tailored to Illinois, 7th Circuit, and U.S. Supreme Court. So using this example, if we do public school and speech here, we've already done the select process. We've selected cases as our material, and we've even done a little bit of filtering. We've actually filtered down by court, which we can see reflected here. So after we've performed our search, we basically have performed the three-step process. The only thing left would be if there was any other filtering we wanted to do, we could do it within these constraints. So we'd be looking and doing any additional research within these additional constraints that we've put in. I just wanted to show that to you because I think giving students and researchers in general the options to perform as many different ways of getting this task done is a great way to kind of start to understand our research process a bit better. Next, I want to talk about the Explore Content Pod. Now, the Explore Content Pod is something that we talked a little bit about in LW1 and LW2, but I just want to remind you of its power. And I know that that sounds kind of dramatic, but the Explore Content Pod is great because it consolidates all of the content on a topic, on a location, and really gives us the ability to search within, almost like pulling through file folders to find what we're looking for. Let's use the Illinois State tab as an example. In the Explore Content Pod, I'm going to look at the state tab here, and I'm going to choose the state of Illinois. Let's say, for example, that I knew jurisdictionally I'd be wanting to deal with either federal or state court materials in the state of Illinois. By using the Illinois State tab here, I have access to all of the materials that I could possibly need, and I even have a search bar that has a filtering constraint here up at the top for the state of Illinois. This is such a great resource. I can actually comb through any of these, including administrative materials, even state-based secondary sources, and find content associated with what I'm looking for. This is a great way to begin our research already honed in on the location of where we want our materials to be. So we've talked about these two resources, but now let's apply what we've learned. Let's use the search select filter process. Let's pull up a case that we actually even talked about in LW2, and let's find some more material associated within that case that can help us find even more cases associated with our problem. I'm going to do public school and speech again, so I'm going to develop my search. I'm just going to do public school and speech. I'm not going to do any select or filtering content here. I'm going to use search select filter like we talked about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep us on cases because I want to look for case law here. I'm then just going to use a search within results, and I'm going to filter for video. Remember, search within results is really, really helpful because it lets us add additional facts that are then looking within our original search. It's not changing the terms of my original search. It's actually finding my term within the pool of original results. This is a really great resource to kind of pare down our results to find what we're looking for. And here she is, right? This is the JC versus the Beverly Hills Unified School District case. Go ahead and let's open that. Now, before we dive in and find some additional content associated with this case, we have to talk about the three-step process, right? The three-step process for every type of case reading that I recommend, starting with our case summary, right? The who, the what, the where, the why. This is like a little bit of an outline of the case, right? This is a great place to start. It's like setting the table before you have dinner or before you eat, right? This helps us understand what's being discussed, who the parties are, and what's at stake here. After the case summary, I talked about recommending that we read the opinion. We skip the LexisNexis headnotes for now, and we dive into the opinion. Why? Well, it's helpful to be able to understand not only how to read a case, but get comfortable with reading the opinion itself. I even talked about in class that as we're reading the opinion, we might want to note either facts or sections of the case and highlight them and make annotations, right? So that we can actually let ourselves know that we are reading the case and we're internalizing what the case is talking about. But after we've read the opinion, this is where we want to go back up and take a look at the LexisNexis headnotes. Now, just a quick cursory reminder about LexisNexis headnotes. Unlike Westlaw or Bloomberg, right, our headnotes are the exact language of the case. Now, why is this helpful? Why am I mentioning this, right? Well, I think it's really helpful because after you've read the opinion, after you've made some discoveries and you're reading the opinion, right, you can actually use the headnotes as you're going through and say, I remember reading this exact section from the opinion. It's going to help you recall what you've read. And I can check, right? I can look here and look at headnote 1 and say entitlement of law appropriateness. And if I click on headnote 1 here, I could see Rule 56C requires summary judgment for the moving party when the evidence viewed in light most favorable, blah, 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 blah. I can go back up to headnote 1 and see that it is the exact language from the opinion. So I can verify that, right? So we've read our case summary, we've read our opinion, we've made some highlights, we've made some notes. Now we're going through our headnotes. And let's say, for example, that as we're going through our headnotes, let's take a look at headnote 9, for example. Let's say we go and we're reading through our headnotes and we say headnote 9. Now that looks familiar. And actually within headnote 9 in the opinion, I highlighted a lot of this as helpful to my argument, right? There are 3 ways that we can get even more out of our cases from not only the headnotes, but from the language of the opinion itself. We've talked about one of them, but let's review it really quick. That is the Shepardized narrowed by this headnote. We talked about the Shepard's report in LW2 in January. We talked about how what it is it's essentially a list of all of the subsequent materials, both cases and other citing sources that have cited somewhere to JC Beverly Hills. So there's some portion of JC versus Beverly Hills that we have these materials that are citing back to, right? So we talked about how we can use the Shepard's report to find helpful materials. We can actually take a look at the Shepard's report and see what's being cited to and is it helpful to me. But we can use shepherdized narrow by this headnote as a way to hone in specifically on the subsequent cases that are citing specifically to headnote 9. So if I click on shepherdized narrow by this headnote, I'm going to get these 6 court decisions that have cited directly to the language in headnote 9. This is really, really helpful, right? Because if I am identifying the language as headnote 9 as being persuasive, important to me, I can then say I have at least 6 cases in various jurisdictions that are touching on similarly important themes in headnote 9 in their own jurisdictions. These might be cases that I want to read and review. We also notice, if I go back here and look at that headnote again, you'll notice that there is a shepherd signal next to that note. So it's going to tell me the most negative treatment that my headnotes citings have received, and we have only 1 positive here. So that means that the most negative treatment that I have for any of these headnote citations is a positive treatment, which is good news. Just means that I should read that positive treatment and see specifically jurisdictionally what headnote is treating that positive and what specifically are they citing as very positive. But let's say I've shepherdized narrow by this headnote, but I want to find more. I want to find more. Well, there's one right above here that is really, really helpful as well. This icon is at the end of every headnote. It's the little magnifying glass, and it says more like this headnote. Go ahead and click on that. This is going to perform what's known as a segment search. This is called segment searching. And basically what this is going to do is this is going to run a search for the text and information in headnote 9 within all of our case law. And it's going to say, is there any material from the headnote that is similarly contained in other cases? Now, most often your first result is going to be the case that you're reviewing because it matches completely, right? But it's also going to line up and find other cases that have some inclusionary words from my headnote. You can see here, this case is missing existent specific facts, light of the evidence, overcome, must show, right? But it's containing, if I read through the overview, at least a discussion of recording off campus, use of school resources, violate First Amendment. We've got intended recording, forecasted substantial disruption. Same thing down here, high school students suspended, internet post, unidentified school defendants, regulate student speech, harassing First Amendment claim, right? So I am looking at this headnote. I'm using the language of the headnote. I'm running a segment search that is going to be then finding areas within my headnote in similar cases. So this is a great way to find additional research authority just using maybe my one case that I find is really persuasive. Now, there's one additional thing we can do. And this is a great, I think, one of my favorite resources as well. Let's type back into JC versus Beverly Hills here. Now, a question that I had when I was going through this in law school and soon thereafter is I said, well, okay, it looks like if I have a headnote with my content, that's really helpful, right? If I've got a headnote there, I can find associated cases. But what if there's a section of my case that I'm reading that doesn't have a headnote that I really, really like? What if I'm reading through the case and I find something and it doesn't have a headnote next to it? How do I find additional cases associated? We have a tool for that, and it's called Legal Issue Trail. It's actually located in the About This Document box here underneath my Shepherd's box. If you click the drop down on the About This Document box, you'll see it at the very, very bottom here, Legal Issue Trail. When you click on Activate Passages, this is actually going to turn our entire document into a gridded section. It's going to then identify each of these gridded sections, and it's going to provide me with the ability to actually see what cases have cited to my case, JC versus Beverly Hills, in that specific section. Let me show you what I mean here. Let's take a look at this one right here. Genuine disputes over facts that might affect the outcome under governing law will properly preclude the entry of summary judgment. Notice we don't have a headnote in here. So if I click inside this box, just anywhere inside the box, it's then going to open JC Beverly Hills, this legal issue trail. Now it's going to show me two different things. You'll see first, I have a block that says JC versus Beverly Hills cited the following cases for this issue. What this is doing is this is actually showing me the two cases that JC versus Beverly Hills cited to in this section. I could see here that I have Anderson versus Liberty Lobby. That's right here. And I also have Arpin versus Santa Clara Valley right here as well. So those are the two cases that JC has cited to. And then I also have the following cases that cited to JC for this issue. Way that I want you to think about this, right, is if I was looking at my Shepard's report, these would be cases that have cited to JC versus Beverly Hills specifically for this blocked out issue. So if our Shepardized narrow by this headnote was a really directed Shepard's report, right, this is an even more directed Shepard's report. This is telling me exactly who has cited to this section as influential. This is really, really helpful. Lastly, I want to show you one final tool that I think is really, really helpful. They're called legal topic summary reports. Now, legal topic summary reports are a great resource, especially if you're doing something like an outline build or if you're trying to find context about an issue. Now, there's two ways to find them. The first would be natively in a case. I'm going to just pull up a case that I know has one, which is Worldwide Volkswagen Corporation versus Woodson here. You will find topic summary reports located in your LexisNexis headnotes. Again, now you're seeing why I always recommend you read the headnotes, but you read them last, right? So because it provides context, but you don't want to skip the headnotes. There's a lot of helpful content here. I'm going to go to my headnotes, and you'll notice in headnote 2, right above my headnote, I have an orange piece of paper icon next to procedural due process. This orange piece of paper icon signifies that there is a topic summary report available. If I click on either the icon or click on the name here, I have the ability to open a topic summary report for this issue. Topic summary reports provide definitional standards, they provide elements, seminal cases, statutes and rules, secondary sources, burdens of proof, standard of review. They provide basically an outline of this topic at large in those major issues. Like I said, it's a great way if you're building an outline or trying to understand the context of an issue to kind of begin your research. It provides some really good information. Not only can we find topic summary reports in cases, we can search for them. And that is through the Sources tab of the Explore Content Pod here. In the Sources tab, we have the ability to actually search for any source, whether it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Post, anything that we need, right? I'm going to do legal topic summaries here. And as I'm typing, my word wheel is going to auto-populate. I'm going to click on this and then just click on it once more. And I'm going to be taken to an advanced search page. In this advanced search page, I can now put in any issue that I want for a legal topic summary. Now, what I recommend is starting kind of broadly here. The reason being is that you're more likely, if you start broadly, to find something that encompasses a larger issue. So I'm going to do something like speech. Now, when I run this, it's going to show me results both state-based and federal-based. So if I wanted to just choose a federal issue, I would go to jurisdiction and I would filter to federal. So this is going to get rid of any of my state-specific information. I then have all of my speech topics. We've got tons of them, including, Child Protection Act, freedom of association, forums, speech forums. But here's just a general one, result 2 for freedom of speech. I can click on this and now get a definitional standard, some seminal cases about the issue, elements, statutes and rules, and any other additional information. So remember, we could find these in the cases with this orange piece of paper icon, or we can search within the Sources tab. We covered quite a bit today, right? We talked about a few things. We talked about searching using search select filter as well as select filter search. We also talked about using the Explore Content Pod in a few different ways, both the State tab and the Sources tab to find what we were looking for. But then specifically, we dove into a case. We opened JC versus Beverly Hills School District, and we used Shepardized narrow by this headnote. We used more like this headnote or segment searching. And finally, we used legal issue trail to find what we're looking for. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me or any of your student reps. Thanks for watching. How do I stop recording so I can talk to Nicholas?